Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll just give it a few minutes, a few seconds here to get everyone ready to go. Thank you again for joining us, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where in the country you're tuning in from. I'm located in Ottawa, and it's a beautiful sunny day today, and Majid is in Toronto. Is it sunny there, Majid?
It very much is a
Great.
great sort of end of summer, early fall day.
Lovely, lovely. This is my favorite time of year. Leaves are starting to change. The sun is still out. It's great. All right, so we'll just give it another few seconds here. Okay. Well, hello and welcome to our Startup Gov webinar entitled Why Entrepreneurs Need to Know About the Competition Bureau. I am Natasha Morano, Director of Corporate and Government Affairs at Startup Canada. Now, to begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which Startup Canada was founded is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. I also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. I genuinely encourage all of you to please take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are residing on today. We welcome you to connect with each other in the chat, and please make sure you are sending your messages to everyone in the room. Zoom defaults to messages to only send to the hosts and panelists, so you'll just need to adjust that to make sure that you send to everyone. Now, today's session is being recorded, and this will be added to our YouTube channel page afterwards as a living resource. So for any of you that can only tune in for part of the session today, not to worry, this will be live on our YouTube channel very soon, and we encourage you to take a look at it at your own time on demand. Now, for those of you who are perhaps not overly familiar with Startup Canada, we are a national nonprofit that is a gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, the community, the tools, and everything that they need to build successful businesses in Canada. Now, since launching in 2012, Startup Canada has grown to support more than 130 entrepreneurs annually, and we have an ever-growing community of ecosystem partners from coast to coast to coast. Now, Startup Gov is one of Startup Canada's flagship programs that provides unique opportunities such as today for entrepreneurs and the private and public sector to come together to co-create solutions and pathways for entrepreneurial success. We do this through webinars like the one you're tuning into now, roundtables, and of course, continued advocacy work. Startup Gov connects the perspectives of entrepreneurs, innovators, industry executives, and government representatives to raise the bar for Canada as a globally competitive and innovation nation. Now, before we get started with today's presentation, I would like to take a moment to thank our incredible Startup Gov partners, including our co-presenting partner, Amazon, our program partners, including MasterCard and EDC, and our community of ecosystem partners, including Moneris, the Women Entrepreneurship Hub, Maine, Innovation Wealth, Mixing Babies with Business, and CGLCC. Now, we are so pleased to have partnered with the Competition Bureau today for our session, and a big thank you to Majid and his team for engaging with us to make this webinar happen. Big thank you, Majid. And for the entrepreneurs turning in today, we're proud to have curated a session focused on why you should know about the Competition Bureau. Because the reality is that for a lot of us, me included, I am an entrepreneur, we are not overly familiar with what the Bureau actually does. So today we hope that you do leave with a better understanding about the laws that are applicable to your businesses and the Bureau's role in promoting a well-functioning marketplace. Our session today will begin with a presentation from our keynote speaker, followed by questions and answers. Now, if you do have a question, you can write that in the Q&A box on the bottom function bar of your screen, and we will do our absolute best to have it answered live. Additionally, we will be following up via email with resources that have been curated by the Competition Bureau that we hope can further assist you. We know sometimes it's difficult to make notes and listen, so not to worry, there will be a detailed email following the session today with all of the links to the resources and the guides that will be discussed. So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our speaker for today, Majid Charania, Director of Compliance, Competition Bureau of Canada. Just a quick little recap on the biography of Majid. He is responsible for promoting compliance by businesses of all sizes within the Competition Act and other labeling statutes that fall within the responsibility of the Bureau. Now, prior to assuming his role, Majid was a special advisor to the Commissioner of Competition, the head of the Competition Bureau. He has a significant enforcement experience both at the Bureau and at the European Commission as a visiting case handler. He has also had experience litigating on behalf of the Commissioner and providing legal advice to the Bureau as counsel with the Competition Bureau Legal Services. Majid holds a certified compliance and ethics professional international designation from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics, as well as a JD from the University of Ottawa and an International Bachelor of Business Administration from the Schulich School of Business at York University. Majid, we are lucky to have you here today. Welcome. I will now turn the virtual screen over to you.
Thanks so much, Natasha, and thank you so much for having us in your webinar series. We're really excited to be able to share with entrepreneurs, what it is that the Bureau does, what they need to know about, and why, our work and why competition law really should matter to them. So really excited to be here, and thanks a lot for the opportunity. As with all presentations from a law enforcement agency, we have a bit of a standard disclaimer. The views that I express, my opinions are my own. Nothing that I communicate in this session will predetermine what the Commissioner or the Bureau or the Department of Justice or other organizations within the federal government do in any situation. So with the legalese out, what I propose to do is start sort of at the highest level, talk a bit about why competition is important and how it links up specifically to SMEs and entrepreneurs, and then get more and more into detail around how the work that the Bureau does in competition law intersects with SMEs, the areas of the law that we enforce, the ways in which we advocate for competition in the market at the government level. And then I'll spend a bit of time talking about ways that businesses can put in place measures to make sure they stay onside the act, to detect misconduct that might be affecting them in their operations, and then also the resources that Natasha, you mentioned, what we have out there to help entrepreneurs understand the law and get in touch with us if they need to request information or file a complaint. So why don't I start with kind of the 50,000-foot view? Why is competition law and policy important? At a really high level, and this, I should say, is actually baked into the law itself, the idea behind having competition enforcement and competition law is that it's meant to put really valuable guardrails around Canada's market economy. It's meant to ensure that the actions by businesses are meant to unleash the value of competition for all Canadians, for us as consumers, for small businesses who are seeking to grow in a level playing field or enter new markets. Really, the guardrails in competition law are meant to make sure that competition and our sort of free market economy actually works to the benefit of Canadian citizens. So there's a box on the screen around small and medium-sized businesses, and there's a mention in the law around making sure that small and medium-sized businesses have an equitable chance to compete and play in the market. That's really important for us at the Bureau because at the end of the day, Canada's sort of competitive intensity and productivity really does rely on firms entering the market, being able to grow, and to do all of that in markets that function properly. And when there are anti-competitive barriers put up by businesses, or even by the rules and regulations that government put in place around the economy, that's when we start to maybe not maximize the pie, maybe leave some money on the table as a society and an economy. So I'll dive a little bit more into that as we go along, because that actually links up to our two major areas of focus: enforcement and advocacy. So that's kind of at a high level. I just talked about society, economy. You might be wondering what competition law has to do with you as an entrepreneur. So I think right off the bat, the fact that it's there in part to help ensure a level playing field, I think is really important. We all know that it can be difficult for an entrepreneur in a new market or with a new business model or idea to actually go from idea to commercialization and scale. And the level playing field is really meant to ensure that you do that based on the merits of your product or service. The law has to do with you because it quite literally applies to all businesses. It doesn't matter how big or small your business is. The law applies to everyone, which sort of creates an obligation of compliance. And that's a bit of the sort of traditional side of law enforcement. When it comes to the Competition Act, everyone needs to know the rules of the road that they have to follow. The other thing that is important in that regard is that not knowing the law is not a defense to any situation where you get embroiled in an investigation or might have done something that was offside. If it's inadvertent and you say you didn't know, that's not actually necessarily going to absolve you of what happened. So knowledge of the rules of the road is really important. And then the resources that we have out there for you can help you understand that and then determine, what do I do in my business, in my operations, to identify the risks and then reduce them or mitigate them. I want to spend just a few minutes on the competition ecosystem. The Bureau is not the only player when it comes to enforcing competition laws and advocating for competition and generally, handling competition policy. There are a lot of different players in this ecosystem, and the lay of the land will help you understand, I think, what we do and what we don't do and how we fit in. So I'll talk a bit more about us as an institution, but at a very high level, we're a law enforcement agency. We're headed up by a commissioner of competition. And when the commissioner is enforcing the law, that mandate is independent. So we don't have a ministerial oversight for the decisions that we have to make around how to handle an enforcement case. On the left-hand side of the screen below the Bureau, you'll see the lawyers in the courts. So that column is really the enforcement side primarily of the law. So we have federal Department of Justice lawyers who take our cases and provide us with legal services. So they will go to civil court or the competition tribunal and litigate our cases. A good example of that is the case that we recently had against Rogers and Shaw in the context of their merger. DOJ lawyers were our lead lawyers on that case. When it comes to criminal prosecution, because we have criminal elements in our law, we have to hand our cases over to Canada's Public Prosecution Service, which is an independent organization. So if any of you have seen Law and Order, they're, let's say, the second half of the show, where they take on cases that are referred to them by the investigators or the police. So we act on the criminal side as investigators. We build cases, and if we find that the case has merit, in order to move it forward, we have to refer it to the Public Prosecution Service of Canada. And then there are the courts. There's a specialized competition tribunal. They hear most competition cases, but also the regular court system will hear some cases, primarily criminal ones. On the right-hand side of the screen, there are a few other actors at play that handle more of the policy and legislative side. So I said the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. That's the federal ministry that has the lead on competition policy. They handle bigger picture questions around is the toolkit for Canada's competition law enforcement fit for purpose? Are there things that need to change at a policy level? They have the lead on that. Parliament, of course, is responsible for passing and amending laws ultimately. And this is actually quite relevant right now. Some of you may have seen in the news that there have been proposals to change the competition laws. So Parliament is involved in that process. ISED is involved in that process. But finally, there's a role, for civil society, for organizations like Startup Canada, for your local chambers of commerce, trade associations, in helping bring the perspective, a really valuable perspective of what's going on the ground. What is the business community? What are SMEs facing? What should we be doing as a society when it comes to competition policy? Your voice is really important, and it provides thought leadership. So it's a critical element of the ecosystem, and it helps the other parts of the ecosystem, I think, do their jobs more effectively. So let's now focus a little bit more on the Bureau itself. So I mentioned, the Competition Bureau is an enforcement agency. We're independent when it comes to our enforcement mandate. We're a national agency as a part of the federal government. So we're based in the Ottawa region, but we have offices in Toronto, where I am, and in Montreal and Vancouver. And we've got over 400 staff with a variety of backgrounds. We've got folks who are investigators. We have economists. Recently, we've actually grown and hired people like data science and folks with a real technical background to actually help us keep pace with changes in technology, with what's going on in the marketplace, so that we're able to continue to understand what's going on in the market and to investigate properly, and to have the tools to actually gather intelligence and move our cases forward. So we've got some folks in our teams who have now a variety of backgrounds, and maybe some backgrounds that are similar to some tech entrepreneurs. Now that you guys have a bit of a sense of what the ecosystem is and what the Bureau is, I want to take a second to talk about what we do and what we don't do to try to debunk maybe some preconceptions or some myths that are out there. So first and foremost, our work is designed to protect and promote the competitive process in markets. So we're not an agency that protects individual companies. We don't pick winners and losers. We're there to make sure that markets function properly. And so to do that, we investigate anti-competitive behavior. We take action against businesses and their people who have broken the law, but we're not a price regulator. We don't say, this is the price that should be prevalent in the market. We're also not the ones to ultimately decide what is legal or illegal. So as an investigative body, we gather the facts, we're driven by the evidence, but we have to take our cases to court. We are not the ultimate arbiter of what's right and what's wrong. We don't actually intervene directly in private commercial disputes between businesses. And that kind of links up to what I was saying earlier around protecting and promoting the competitive process and competition more generally. But what we do is provide resources so that businesses can understand their legal obligations. They can understand what measures they can take to minimize the risk of being offside the law, and also to be able to detect conduct that might be affecting them. And so by building awareness of the law, we're trying to empower folks like you, both to minimize your risk, to make sure you're onside the law, but also to detect conduct where we might be able to do something that actually makes sure that the market functions properly. One last point that I'll note is that we don't give legal advice. what we do is try to provide information, but ultimately it is up to businesses, entrepreneurs to determine what their options are and what they should do if they find a risk area in their business. So I talked a bit about what we do, what we don't do. Now what I'll do is maybe give a little bit more information about the different areas of the law that we enforce. So diving a bit deeper into the protect side of our mandate. So there are four kind of broad areas of competition law that we enforce. The first is cartels, and we have nothing to do really with drug cartels. That's not our business. We're talking more about businesses in a market that instead of competing on the merits of their product, they're colluding to set things like prices, to divvy up markets amongst themselves, to rig bids for things like public procurement contracts, or even to fix wages, or to make agreements around not poaching each other's employees. So all those types of agreements amongst firms in a market, that's what we mean by cartel conduct. And cartel conduct, I should mention, is part of our criminal enforcement mandate. So cartels are severe criminal conduct. There's a potential for hefty fines, for jail time. It's quite serious. The other area that we enforce that has a criminal element, but also a civil element to it, is deceptive marketing. This, like cartels, is something that all businesses need to know about because they need to stay on side the law. And I would imagine pretty much everyone here is trying to sell an idea or a product or a service. And so in marketing that product or service or idea, you have to know the rules of the road around how you make claims, how you engage in online marketing, for example, what you say about your product and its performance. All of these examples fall under marketing practices where there are rules. There are a huge number of these types of practices out there where there could be risk and where folks should really know about the rules. So the resources that we'll share later can give you more detail about marketing practices and the law around them. I'm not going to go through an exhaustive list of the types of practices that are covered, but by and large, any sort of marketing activity should be informed by the rules of the road and should be compliant. On the other side of our enforcement, we look at monopolistic practices, restrictive trade practices, as we call them. In simple terms, I like to call it really big firms behaving badly. So if there are companies in a particular market that have, significant market power, we are empowered to investigate and look at their business practices that may be harming competition. So that's an area where, if you think about around the world, scrutiny of big tech platforms under antitrust laws, that's what I mean by monopolistic practices. And those are the types of investigations that the Bureau can conduct in order to understand what's going on and potentially take action if there is conduct that's offside the law. And finally, last but certainly not least, is our ability to review mergers and acquisitions. So Rogers and Shaw is a great recent example that's been in the news a lot. When companies are looking to merge, the Bureau has the authority to review any merger. And what we're looking for really is to assess whether a deal is likely to lessen or prevent competition. That can take a number of forms, but the key point here is that it's not actually just big transactions. Rogers and Shaw obviously were two big companies, but even small transactions like exits from a market could potentially attract scrutiny, and especially if there are situations where you might question whether a new innovation or an idea might be killed off as a competitive threat by the acquirer rather than supported. So that's a conceptual idea around the Bureau's merger review and assessing whether a deal might be lessening or preventing competition in a market. So that's an overview of our protection mandate. I know there's a lot to unpack there. Again, our resources that we've got for you can really help. If there's something in here that gives you a light bulb moment, we have more information that you can look at to deepen your knowledge. I talked about a couple of cases, Rogers and Shaw. There's a few others that might come to mind that are illustrative. So the bread price fixing case that perhaps many of you have heard of, that's an example of a criminal cartel investigation. On the deceptive marketing side, we've got an ongoing case relating to Cineplex and fees that they add on in their buying process for tickets online. We've had cases against Ticketmaster in the same vein. And we've been looking into matters sort of called quote unquote greenwashing related to advertising claims made around environmental issues. So that's an overview of one side of our work, so the protection side, the enforcement side. The other side of our work involves promoting competition. And what we mean by promoting competition is being the advocate for pro-competitive regulation. So I think we all know there's a lot of business activity in Canada that's regulated. A lot of industry sectors are regulated, like finance, fintech, health, digital healthcare, telecoms. In these areas, we try to provide a voice related to competition for governments, because governments can actually affect the rules of the game. They can determine, in part through regulation, whether, for example, an incumbent firm, a large firm that's already in the market, sees its power entrenched by the way that regulations are formulated, or they can put up barriers, maybe inadvertently, to new entrants to a market or entrants that are looking to scale up. So we try to provide, whether it's by studying markets or making submissions to other parts of government, we try to provide a competition perspective, and we try to help through recommendations around how to build more pro-competitive regulation, so that at the end of the day, SMEs and entrepreneurs have a fair shake and are really able to enter markets, even those that are regulated, and have a fair chance of growing and scaling. So that sort of brings me to how you can actually help us help you. There is a lot of work that we do, as I said, to promote the competitive process. But at the end of the day, we're not industry experts in a particular sector. We actually really do need information from businesses of all sizes about what they're seeing in the market and how the market actually works. So we really benefit from receiving complaints about what's going on in the market that might be offside, but also information around, like I said, how regulations could be impacting your ability to enter and grow in a market. That can help us across our promotion and advocacy work. So I know you guys, entrepreneurs, are really busy. So whether it's you or even your local trade association or advocacy group, if you encourage even those organizations to put issues or competition matters on our radar in your sector, that is a real value add for the whole competition ecosystem. I'm going to switch gears now to talk a bit about compliance programs and a bit about our resources, and end off the presentation with that. So, I talked about rules of the road. I also talked a little bit about our advocacy mandate. Having a compliance program in place, even a very simple one that allows you to identify risk and then reduce the risks, can help you in a number of ways. First of all, I think it's intuitive. The more you reduce your risk, the less likely you are to potentially get in trouble and be on the receiving end of an investigation that can be very costly. So that is an obvious benefit. But there is also a benefit by using the mechanisms of compliance like training and education to help folks within your businesses actually spot problems, spot misconduct when others are not playing by the rules, and help us make sure that markets work, in the way that they're really supposed to. So compliance programs can provide a lot of benefits. They don't have to be overly complicated or expensive to set up. Some people might have the sense that, oh, I need a compliance department to do all of this, and it's really expensive. That isn't necessarily the case. We take the view that a compliance program should be tailored to the size and scale and operations of a business. So even a startup can take measures to reduce risk and identify misconduct that's going on that could affect them. So how do I learn about all of this? How do I actually put this into practice? We have a compliance portal or a compliance hub that is really designed for non-experts in competition law. It links up compliance principles, so the measures you can take to reduce your risk, with the basics of the law, so that you can have a bit of a one-stop shop to learn about what the law is and then how to make sure you're on side. Even shorter than our hub, even more accessible, we've got compliance boot camps, short videos with case studies, curated resources that are really designed for people who are really busy and have a lot of stuff to do to still get the basics of the law and have light bulb moments to know, oh, maybe I need to look at X or Y type of issue in more detail. So we've got those, they're all on our website. We've also been working with third parties to put out podcasts and other forms of resources that are really accessible. So we've got on the QR code now on the screen, a link tree that takes all of the stuff, all the resources that are on our own website and puts it together in one easy, accessible spot with the podcasts and other resources we've done in partnership with third parties. So I'd really encourage you to sign up for our social media, to check out the link at the QR code and keep those resources on hand. And I'd also encourage you, as a form of compliance promotion, to share them with your colleagues in your business and in your networks, because they can really help. They're easy to understand and they're free. So I will leave it at that. I know that's a lot of information to absorb. I'm more than happy to take questions and we can go from there.
Thank you so much, Majid. I sincerely appreciate that. And I didn't actually realize the depth and the scope of the competition ecosystem. There's so many different layers and sort of players involved there. So that was really informative from my perspective. The other piece that I found really interesting was just the piece around how there's on-demand support. So there's boot camps, there's opportunities for a founder or small business opportunity to go to your website and sort of get that on-demand support. And then the compliance hubs as well, I think would certainly be applicable to those tuning in today. I think an interesting link to, especially the work that we do at Startup Canada through the Startup Gov program, Majid, is that you mentioned the conference happening on October 5th. And how it's more focused sort of on the policy piece, more macro level than the micro. But I think what's really important for founders and entrepreneurs tuning in is that you can be part of those conversations. And so by bringing your concerns, bringing your thoughts, bringing your recommendations, bringing your lived experience to the folks at the Bureau, even to your member of parliament, you can be part of those. You can co-create these new policies and programs that are, not even necessarily created at this point. So your voices truly do matter. And even though that may seem daunting, policy, it's such a big macro thing, you can be part of that. And so I think the information and the education around how your perspective matters in the great scheme of things is so vital. And that's something that we certainly pride ourselves on at Startup Canada, is trying to create opportunities for entrepreneurs to bring their voice to government and of course, amplifying the work that they're doing. And so we're very grateful for partners such as yourselves, Majid, at the Competition Bureau, for taking the time to listen, to hear, and just being part of that ecosystem to genuinely co-create solutions, programs, policies, law, competition, and making sure that there's an ethical marketplace for entrepreneurs to succeed. So thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciated it. Thank you to all of you for attending today's session. I know taking an hour out of your day is not an easy thing. So we do hope that today you did better understand on why the Competition Bureau matters to entrepreneurs. We do have a quick feedback poll that we will launch in about 3 seconds if I'm timed well with my colleague. Yes, there we go. So if you could please just fill out that poll, that helps us. That helps us better identify what we can do to improve upon these things and really make sure that we're offering educational webinars such as this that are in tune with what you're looking for. So again, thank you to our fantastic speaker, Majid, for donating your time and your expertise. We look forward to seeing you next week. I can't believe it's around the corner now in Calgary. And again, those details for our Startup Canada tour are in the chat function. I would like to take a quick moment again to thank our Startup Gov partners, including our presenting partner, Amazon, our program partners, MasterCard and EDC, and of course, our community of ecosystem partners, including Moneris, the Women's Entrepreneurship Hub, Maine, Innovation Wealth, Mixing Babies with Business, and CGLCC. And last but not least, thank you to the Competition Bureau for taking the time today to deliver that webinar. We look forward to future engagements with you. And all of you joining us today, take good care. Thank you. And we hope to see you at some of the upcoming engagements that are on the horizon. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you so very much.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Take care.